folks, my next guest tonight is one of the world's leading theoretical physicists and an authority on string theory, which could explain every single thing in the universe. Please welcome the author of The Elegant Universe, Mr. Brian Greene. Now, people naturally, they tighten up when they hear that I do, because I was very bad in physics and a lot of things. But I get nervous when I think that someone's going to try and explain physics to me.
Calm down, Conan. It'll be all right.
You're touching my upper thigh. Nervousness turning to anger. No. How did you get into this whole thing in the first place? When you were a kid, did you want to be a physicist?
Well, you know, as a youngster, I had those questions that many youngsters do. What am I doing? What's it all about? That kind of thing. And I just realized that people who were much smarter than me had thought about that for so many years and never came up with anything that was really satisfying, that perhaps really thinking about the questions themselves deeply, which is what physicists do, would be the most satisfying way to get some answers.
Well, the most complicated thing here to talk about is string theory, and you're trying to explain how the universe all fits together. Does this picture on the front of the book have anything to do with it? Does it explain anything? Because it's really cool to look at. Is that?
No.
It means
no. It has nothing to do with anything.
It's like for an hour, I was supposed to read it today to kind of understand, and I spent the first 45 minutes going, yo.
I know, it's a cool picture. You know, that's like an artist's rendition of space, time, and light and galaxies sort of all happening together, but it means nothing.
Okay. It's very groovy, though. I like it. Tell us, people talk about string theory. You hear about it all the time. It's supposed to be very important. You do. I hear about string theory constantly. Hey. Walking down the street, you know, buying a slushie. Someone's talking about string theory. Cabbies. Oh, that's string theory. Please be quiet. Get me to my destination.
I think they're probably talking about string cheese.
Oh. Our apologies.
Yeah, it's basically the same stuff.
String theory. What is string theory? Tell us what's going on.
Well, I mean, the idea itself is pretty straightforward. For about 2,000 years, people have asked, if you take any chunk of material, cut it in half again, ultimately what do you come to? What are the basic ingredients making up everything in the universe?
Right, and they used to think it was the atom.
That's
is that right? They used to think the atom is the smallest thing there is.
That's right. In our century, people thought it was atoms, but then they found that atoms are made of smaller things, electrons that swarm around a central nucleus, it's called, which has protons and neutrons. But even that's not the end of the line. It's like a sequence of Russian dolls, because inside the neutrons and protons are smaller particles. They're known as quarks.
Right.
Now, string theory comes along and says there's one more layer. If you look deeply inside an electron or deeply inside a quark, there's a little tiny loop of vibrating energy. It looks like a string. That's where the name comes from. And that is thought to be the basic ingredient making up everything. Now, just one other thing. If you look at a violin string, it can play different notes by vibrating in different patterns. The strings in string theory also can vibrate in different patterns, but we don't hear them as different musical notes. We see them as different particles. So the richness of the world around us is due to the different vibrational
patterns. How they're
patterns.
Vibrating. Now, you're talking about something that I don't think you can probably see. Has anyone seen one of these strings? Is there a microscope that could see one, or is that just impossible? It's just theoretical.
No, nobody's seen them ever. And the reason...
So this could be complete nonsense, basically.
No, this is job security is what it's
yeah.
about.
I mean, you know, you could be the greatest scam artist.
It could be.
Going. There are these things, you can't see them, and tell us more. I'd like to, but I can't see it.
Yeah, but you see, it's not
so where's my check?
See, it's not surprising that you haven't seen them, because these things are really tiny.
Right.
I mean, if you were to take a single atom and enlarge it so that it was as big as the entire known universe, the little string in string theory would only magnify to the size of a tree. So a tree is to the universe as a string is to an atom. So these things are so tiny.
We're never going to see a string.
Well, it's unlikely we'll see it directly, but there are many strange things that we can't see directly, such as black holes, which have now been experimentally verified in terms of their existence by indirect means. I mean, so we hope that there'll be an indirect way to sense that these are part of how the world is put together.
I mean, in fairness, Einstein theorized a lot of things which in 1915, 1918, which later on we found out were true using scientific methods. He just calculated it. And so you're hoping that through the same process, later on we'll prove that they exist.
Yeah, that's the point, exactly.
Now, you talk in this book about how there are additional dimensions. And whenever I hear that, I think of that Star Trek episode where there's another dimension, where there's a Spock who's got a beard.
Right. Yeah, I know it.
And there's a Kirk who's just a jerk, you know? But you're talking about other dimensions. And I always thought, well, there are 3 dimensions. Can the human mind grasp more? You're saying there's 7, 8, 9 more dimensions.
I mean, that's what the theory says, and I don't think any of us can actually picture those extra dimensions, but the theory says undeniably our universe has more than the 3 common dimensions that we all move through all the time freely. So it's a strange idea, but there's an analogy which I think lets you grasp it a little bit more clearly. If you take sort of a little, I mean, this is from
You have props. You're like Gallagher.
Yeah, sorry. so you have this fellow right here, and from far away, this will look like a one-dimensional line.
You'll just see a line,
That's right. You can't see the thickness from far away. So if a little ant were walking on this, you'd say, well, I can move left or right between my hands, but that's about it. But then if you have binoculars, you can zoom in on this, and you see that there is actually a second dimension. It's the circular dimension that wraps around this piece of material, so your little ant can not only move left or right, it can also walk in the clockwise, counterclockwise direction. And what that means is dimensions come in 2 flavors. They can be big, obvious, easy to see, or tiny and curled up and much more difficult to detect. Now, this is a thing in our universe, but string theory says that idea works for the whole universe itself. There are 3 big, obvious dimensions, left, right, back, forth, and up, down.
Right.
But there are 6, in fact, probably 7 more that are curled up, really tiny, just like the circular direction along this piece of material. So that's why we haven't seen them.
I mean, we don't have a lot of time, but don't you think that there are some things that we're not meant to understand? I mean, the classic is the classic. People are like giggling, but it's my sad attempt to be serious. The end of the universe and what's beyond that, and you've heard people say we are not meant to understand something, that it's too abstract. Is that the case, or do you think you focus on something long enough, humans can figure it out?
I sort of had that feeling watching Reverso Man, but sort of...
Yeah, right. Reverso Man is confounded. All
that
physicists.
was really confusing.
Yeah.
But science does seem to teach us that if we're patient enough and we work hard enough, just about every mystery that seems completely insoluble at one period in time, ultimately we understand. So I don't think there's anything I'd really put out there as something we will never be able to understand.
All right. Yeah?
Even the popularity of Ally McBeal?
All right. You always pick to slam something most people like.
I know.
That's why. Tom Hanks. How do you stand him? The Elegant Universe is a much-praised book because it does. I was reading parts of it today, and it really does explain a lot of things to people like me who understand shockingly little. So, Brian Greene, thank you very much for being on the program.
Thank you.
Come on back sometime. Check this book out. We'll take a break, folks. We'll be right back. All right, everybody, we're back. That's our show for the night. I want to thank all my guests. Stay tuned for later. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.